Stop scrolling right now. I know you feel it. That deep, cold ache in your chest when you realize you're completely alone, even when you're surrounded by people. Most of us run from that feeling, right? We binge watch, we scroll, we distract ourselves until the feeling of isolation fades. But what if the greatest, most powerful, most necessary transformation of your entire life isn't found in relentless connection, but in that very terrifying solitude? Today, we are diving deep into the profound, revolutionary mind of the master psychologist Carl Jung, and trust me, what he says about loneliness will change how you view every single relationship you have, including the fundamental one with yourself. Stick around, because this isn't just theory. This is the instruction manual for turning emotional pain into absolute gold. And you absolutely need to hear this radical perspective. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad you decided to click on this one, because today we are tackling perhaps the heaviest but most crucial topic in modern human experience: loneliness. We're not talking about the kind of temporary isolation you fix with a quick coffee date or a text message. We are talking about existential, soul-searching isolation, the kind of silence that truly terrifies us when the distractions finally cease. The groundbreaking work of Carl Jung gives us a totally revolutionary, and often challenging, perspective on this universal human experience. He didn't see loneliness as merely a social problem to be solved externally, but as a critical psychological crucible, a necessary forge for authentic personal growth and the formation of the truly unique individual. This deep dive into Jungian psychology will fundamentally redefine your understanding of being alone. Think about the great paradox for a moment, friends. Society tells us non-stop that the ultimate state of happiness is being connected, being accepted, being part of a group, never feeling isolated. We chase likes, comments, social approval, and external affirmation in a desperate attempt to fill a deep internal void. But Jung, ever the intellectual rebel, flips that script entirely. He suggests that the state of being truly, meaningfully connected to others is absolutely impossible and unattainable until you have first achieved a profound, unshakable connection with yourself, independent of external validation. And guess what the price of that self-connection is? It requires deep solitude. It requires you to sit in the quiet room with all the uncomfortable parts of you that you usually keep locked away. This concept is the central pillar of Jung's entire psychological structure, what he famously called the process of individuation. If you've heard the term individuation floating around but weren't quite sure what it really entailed, think of it this way: it is the lifelong process of becoming a whole, complete, and psychologically indivisible self. It involves moving decisively beyond the endless masks you wear, the persona, beyond the expectations of family, culture, society, and your immediate peer group, and finally realizing the unique, unrepeatable destiny that is inherently rooted within you. This is intensely difficult, often painful work. And that is exactly why Jung noted, so few people actually embark on the journey, because the unavoidable price of entry is often acute, frightening isolation. Jung strongly implied, and his therapeutic work confirmed, that you simply cannot achieve this ultimate goal of self-realization without going through a required period, perhaps even prolonged periods, of intense loneliness and self-reliance. Why is this necessary? Because when you are constantly surrounded by the collective, your psyche remains subconsciously tethered to the group norms, the consensus thinking, and the collective consciousness. The persistent, loud voices and expectations of others inevitably drown out the subtle, internal guidance of your true, deep self. Loneliness, in the Jungian framework, becomes the psychological megaphone that forces you to listen, finally, to that quiet, inner wisdom that so often gets suppressed, ignored, or dismissed by external demands and social pressure. We are all born into what Jung termed the collective unconscious, a shared, universal reservoir of human experience, instincts, and archetypes that gives us essential psychological structure. While this foundation is necessary for basic social function, Jung believed it also acts like a set of psychological training wheels for the adult. To truly grow, you must take those wheels off, and that deliberate, conscious act of detachment feels exactly like loneliness. It feels like you are purposefully separating yourself from the comfort, safety, and established meaning of the collective herd. This separation is terrifying because our survival instincts scream for belonging. Yet this internal revolution is utterly necessary for achieving genuine, psychological independence and true maturity. One of the deepest, most primal reasons we dread loneliness so intensely is because when the external noise and distractions of our busy lives finally fade away, we are forced to confront something difficult that Jung labeled the shadow. The shadow is the psychological container for everything we deny, repress, or reject about ourselves. The hidden rage, the deep insecurities, the unconscious jealousy, the embarrassing desires, and even the unfulfilled creative potentials we have abandoned. In a crowd, you can cleverly hide your shadow behind a socially pleasing persona. But in true solitude, the shadow inevitably takes center stage and aggressively demands your undivided attention. This is precisely where the emotional rubber meets the road. Tmentmen. Sitting alone forces an uncomfortable, often painful, but absolutely necessary conversation with this darker, denied side of your personality. This demanding process is what Jung called shadow integration. If you stubbornly refuse to face your shadow in the crucible of solitude, Jung warned that its energy doesn't disappear. Instead, it is violently projected outwards onto others, which is precisely why we sometimes hate or judge others so fiercely for possessing traits we unconsciously possess but deny in ourselves. Loneliness, therefore, is the unwavering, unforgiving mirror that shows you your own reflection without any flattering filters or social adjustments. Think of the persona, again, as the elaborate psychological mask we construct and wear specifically for the outside world. The charming employee, the perfectly supportive friend, the flawless parent, or the stoic professional. Loneliness performs a vital function by stripping that mask away completely. When you are genuinely alone, there is no immediate audience, so the exhausting performance finally stops. This persona collapse is deeply destabilizing, often feeling like an overwhelming loss of fundamental identity. But in reality, it is the essential first step toward finding your true, durable identity underneath all those layers of performance and expectation. When you resolutely begin walking the challenging path of individuation, you will naturally and inevitably become less and less like the average conformist person. You start developing unique, self-generated interests, deeply held values, and perspectives that may not align cleanly with your existing social circle, family structure, or professional environment. This difference, this uniqueness, is often met with resistance, deep misunderstanding, or even outright rejection from the collective, who prefer conformity. This necessary divergence, once again, results in a profound and isolating kind of intellectual and spiritual loneliness, a sense of being fundamentally other. You can see this arduous journey of individuation and solitude mirrored perfectly throughout classical mythology, specifically in the enduring narrative of the hero's journey. Every hero, whether they are Odysseus or Luke Skywalker, must consciously leave the familiar safe village, venture alone into the frightening, unknown wilderness, face internal and external monsters, and finally return transformed. The wilderness in this context isn't just a physical place. It is a critical psychological state, the state of profound solitude that allows the deep, catalytic inner transformation to fully occur. Jung was fascinated by these universal parallels because they confirmed the innate structure of the human psyche. Jung viewed this required period of isolation not just as a standard psychological phase, but as a deeply necessary spiritual one. He believed that the internal search, the intense confrontation with the shadow, and the seeking of the self was fundamentally a religious or spiritual experience, even for those who did not adhere to a formal religious tradition. It is the crucial moment the individual soul connects with the vast oceanic depths of the unconscious mind, searching for meaning and purpose that transcends the immediate material world. This search demands silence and withdrawal from the world's clamor. It is absolutely tempting, and so much easier in the short term, to stay firmly entrenched in the group. Groups offer powerful emotional comfort, shared meaning, instant validation, and a prefabricated set of answers to life's biggest questions. But Jung gently warned us that while groups offer a superficial kind of safety, they often severely limit true individual potential. They provide warmth and belonging, but they actively prevent the internal fire of true, self-generated growth from igniting. That transformative fire, that creative spark, needs the cold, challenging, and clear air of solitude to truly burn bright and independently. So the burning question remains, what do you actually do with yourself in this necessary lonely space? Jung suggested practical, powerful techniques like active imagination. This is a process where you deliberately engage directly with the mysterious contents of your unconscious, your persistent dreams, your spontaneous fantasies, and your sudden, vivid imagery, not just analyzing them from a distance, but holding active, purposeful conversations with them as if they were real entities. This intense, therapeutic internal dialogue can only happen effectively and safely when external noise, demands, and judgment are completely silenced. We often fear the state of boredom immensely because it is a very real, very tangible form of soft loneliness and inactivity. But boredom is, counterintuitively, psychologically crucial. When you run out of things to distract yourself with, when the scrolling ends and the shows finish, your mind has no choice but to turn inward and initiate the deep work. Jung would argue that boredom is simply the quiet, persistent knock on the door, inviting you into the most interesting, complex, and rewarding room in the entire house, your own vast, complex internal world. Embrace the pause, embrace the silence, and let your psyche speak, everyone. For those of you already familiar with the more nuanced Jungian concepts, loneliness is also vitally important for integrating the anima, the inner, often neglected feminine aspect in men, or the animus, the inner unexpressed masculine aspect in women. These internal opposites must be understood, engaged with, and unified into the personality for true psychological wholeness. This intimate, complex, and transformative internal unification requires the utmost privacy, self-reflection, and detachment from outside influence to be successful. A process that inherently feels isolating. Think critically about our modern dilemma, Sahabat. We are undeniably the most technologically connected generation in recorded human history. Yet study after study reports that we simultaneously feel the highest levels of profound existential loneliness. Jung saw this crisis coming with uncanny clarity. We are actively substituting true, deep, internal connection and the hard work of individuation for shallow, rapid-fire, and ultimately meaningless external contact. We are constantly trying to outsource our internal life, our self-worth, and our sense of identity. And this substitution is fundamentally making us miserable and psychologically fragmented. Many people mistakenly believe that their pervasive loneliness will be miraculously cured the moment they find the perfect romantic partner, or a profoundly supportive friend group, or a new vibrant community. Jung would gently but firmly push back on that comforting illusion. If you enter a relationship while still psychologically fragmented, that is, unindividuated, you inevitably place an impossible, crushing burden on the other person to complete you, to make you whole. This pressure inevitably leads to disappointment, codependency, and ultimately, a more painful form of coupled loneliness because the true void remains unfilled. The beautiful, redemptive irony inherent in this difficult psychological path is that, by courageously embracing the necessary loneliness required for true individuation, you become radically capable of real, mature, and independent love. You begin to relate to others from a place of profound psychological wholeness, not chronic, draining neediness. You genuinely don't need them to fill your internal void. You choose them freely to share the fullness and richness of your already complete life. That, according to Jung, is true, mature connection, a genuine psychological and spiritual triumph that starts in solitude. Often, the sheer terror of isolation we feel masks an even deeper, more unsettling fear, the fear of inherent meaninglessness. When we are finally alone, stripped of our roles and titles, we are forced to ask the big, scary, existential questions. What is my true purpose here? What does this life all mean? Jung taught that facing this immense existential dread head-on, in complete solitude, is the only possible way to forge an authentic, durable, self-generated meaning and purpose for your life that cannot be taken away by external circumstances. Now, a crucial, necessary caveat. Jung's promotion of solitude is absolutely not an endorsement of pathological withdrawal or clinical depression. There is a fundamental difference between temporary, intentional psychological retreat for deep growth and chronic, debilitating social isolation rooted in fear, trauma, or mental illness. The critical difference lies in intention and purpose. Jungian solitude must consciously serve the conscious goal of self-discovery and integration, not simply avoidance of the world. If your isolation feels destructive and hopeless, please seek professional help immediately. During these challenging times of intense inner work and isolation, Jung often found immense solace, grounding, and stability in the spontaneous creation and contemplation of mandalas. These circular, complex, symbolic diagrams represented the centering of the self and helped powerfully anchor his psyche during turbulent periods of intense inner change and unconscious exploration. Find your own personal anchor during your lonely times, everyone. Whatever form it may take, be it art, nature, or structured internal reflection, loneliness often acts like a powerful spotlight, shining brightly on our deepest emotional wounds, unresolved traumas, and persistent psychological complexes. Jung encouraged us not to view these painful wounds as indicators of personal failure, but rather as immense sources of transformative energy and profound wisdom. The wounded healer archetype illustrates this truth. The person who has been most broken often has the most profound capacity to help and understand others, precisely because they bravely embraced their own inner isolation, faced their pain, and meticulously healed internally. So, what tangible action can you all take starting today? My practical advice, deeply rooted in Jung's framework for growth, is to actively schedule solitude. Do not wait for it to happen accidentally. Be intentional. Carve out a non-negotiable 30 minutes every day or every weekend where your phone is completely off. The TV is off, and you simply sit with yourself. Maybe journal or just listen to the quiet internal rumblings of your own soul. That scheduled time is sacred time for your psyche, and it is the key to unlocking the gold, the final, magnificent reward of enduring this, sometimes lonely, often painful, but absolutely necessary journey of individuation. You emerge authentically you. You stop desperately trying to fit into external molds and expectations, and you finally start living a life that is truly aligned with your deepest, most honest nature. This authentic existence, forged in the quiet fire of isolation, is what Jung firmly believed leads to genuine, stable psychological peace and profound, lasting satisfaction. It's absolutely worth the ache. Trust me completely on this point. Friends, fellow travelers, if you feel that gnawing sense of profound isolation today, Please remember the powerful, encouraging wisdom of Carl Jung. You are not failing. You are preparing. You are not stuck. You are courageously entering the necessary stage of deep, transformative growth. If this deep psychological dive resonated with you and genuinely changed how you view your own solitude, please hit that like button. It's crucial and helps me know what complex content you want more of. Drop a comment below and tell me honestly, how has a period of intense loneliness helped you grow or forced you to change? Don't forget to subscribe and share this with a fellow soul who might desperately need to hear this message of psychological hope. Until next time, keep exploring your own incredible depths and stay well and reflective.